And welcome back to Frankly Speaking in conjunction with May He Rain. And joining me on the line tonight is my good friend, Julien DeMarco. Julien, buddy, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, Julien. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we got a couple of interesting topics tonight. The first of which we're going to talk about democracy in America and how conservatives are losing faith in the political system they gave us, or at least the political system that they have come to really, offer incense to in that regards. And Julien, we got a divided country. We've done a few shows here, me and you talking about how, conservatives are upset. They're talking about an amicable divorce. They're talking about, picking up their guns and defending the Constitution. They're talking about, breaking away. They're talking about civil war here. Of course, here for us at Frankly Speaking, we don't endorse any of that. Just bringing up the conversations here. And lo and behold comes this study, Julien. 52% of conservatives now are talking about, maybe it's time we give up on democracy. I guess my question is, this is the classical liberal ideology that gave us democracy from its origin during the Enlightenment, Julien. If they move away from democracy, what do classical liberals have left?
I'm not really sure. It was this poll that was recently done that you're referring to. It was done by the Harvard Kennedy School, the Institute of Politics at the Harvard Kennedy School, and it's between 18 and 29%. So that's really the prime basis for the future. I mean, I guess I'm not the prime basis for the future, seeing as I'm 31, but I don't think I'm that. I still think I'm young, but I guess I'm not important to be in this poll. But it's they say that they believe that the United States democracy is in trouble if not already failing. So, I mean, and only 7% of the respondents in this poll think that America has a healthy democracy. Now, they polled 2,109 Americans between the ages of 18 and 29 years old, and only 7% believe that America has a healthy democracy. That's a very small percent, and especially seeing as it's over 50% of the people that they polled believe that it is in trouble or failed. I mean, I don't know where do you go after this?
Yeah.
What are you going? And nobody has any solutions, but yet it seems like it's just more democracy, more voting. I was recently listening to the BBC, and they want to. I don't know if it was in Canada. They wanted to, or I think in Canada, the voting age is already 16. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. But they're talking about, I forget what segment this was. I was in the car, I was driving. I forget what news segment this was, but on the BBC, they were talking about democracy and lowering the voting age to 16 in most westernized countries. I believe it was in England. Yes, it was in England. There's somebody who is 17, I believe, pushing for and advocating for in Canada. In Scotland, I do know, you can quote me on this, in Scotland they do have 16-year-olds can vote. And I'm just like, I just don't think it's a good idea. Well, first off, I don't believe in voting. I most certainly don't believe that 16-year-olds should be able to vote. And so, one of the persons that they had was a Canadian professor of economics and something else, and and he was talking about like how he tries, like all of the students that he has are very engaged in politics. He teaches primary school, so high school kids, and how they're all engaged in politics. But the thing is, all these kids, whether it's in America, Scotland, Canada, youth in the Western countries, particularly those countries that I have named, are very indoctrinated with liberalism, and they just want more of it. And the reason why, they want older people want younger people to vote is so they can keep pushing the liberal agenda even more radically to the left.
Yeah. Yeah, because younger people are generally more emotional. They're not mature enough. They haven't experienced life. They haven't had to raise families and deal with anything real. They're easily manipulated. Democracy is known for manipulating sort of a population in order to get a certain result, a certain outcome when it comes to election. I don't think it's a surprise, which really puts democracy in the bad light in a lot of different ways. Julie, you don't even need to really read these polls or conduct polls really at this point in history. Listen, I'm in middle America. I'm in one of the reddest states that there is, and people are absolutely dispirited and demoralized. Yeah, they have a right to vote. Yeah, they can go out there and make their voices heard, but everybody understands that something has changed in America, even despite the right of the people to go out there and self-governance and self-determination. People don't trust the process anymore. And I think you don't need polls. Again, I think you can just talk to people on the ground. I know I'm feeling that every day out here where I live, Julian. And so, in that sense, this poll only confirms what most people are feeling now. And I guess, I'll go back to my original question. I don't know what America is if the democratic aspect comes into question, because in many ways democracy is a creed for us Americans. It's a creed by how we live by. It's a creed by how we determine right from wrong and good from evil, really, in that respect. It's not like the old world where we depended on the creeds of the church or the creeds of a monarch that were much more steady in that regard. We've seen this country going to the far left for a long time now. Conservatives continue to take losses. I'm just trying to grasp it in my mind what this means when conservatives and classical liberals say they're giving up on democracy. I mean, are they looking back at monarchy? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I've talked to some conservatives and I've asked them that question, and they have absolute horrors over the idea of monarchy. They would tell you, oh, I would never let no man rule over me. I get to determine my own fate, right? I have my right to self-governance. My opinion matters for something, but you've had your opinion and you've had the system that you've loved, and look what it's turned into. You don't even have any faith in it anymore. What's the solution here? Okay, even if we start talking about breaking the country up into smaller pockets, the left is not going to let you off the hook at this point in time. There's no way. Like you said on one of our last show, Lincoln settled the issue of secession right now. Conservatives are just upset. They've given us a system that's been turned on them. And now, Julian, they have no answers on how to resolve these problems.
Because liberalism and democracy is a religion. Although, it's a religion in and of itself that infiltrates all and destroys all. Everybody thinks that their opinion matters, and everybody believes that they should be involved in politics. And it's really interesting to see. Just for me, I always find it fascinating from a sociological standpoint, because I don't believe in democracy. I don't believe in liberalism. So it's always interesting to look and study people who do, because it seems so indoctrinating. It seems so brainwashed to see people who have absolute faith in democracy and liberalism, and then say it's all falling down around us, and that democracy is bad. But then it's just like, well, why don't we just go with the system that worked for thousands of years? And so, oh, well, I don't want to have a monarchy. Okay, So what is your solution? More of democracy that you say is the problem, but yet you still believe in it. It's really this. I think the word would probably. Well, it's really this gymnastics game, really. This mental gymnastics game.
Yeah, it is. I think, Julian, it's interesting because for my part, I take more of an integralist position. I think that's just for our time, I consider that a more practical position for now, even though I will acknowledge ultimately, I think monarchy, going back to at least Catholic monarchy, may be the best answer. But listen, I still partake in the system because I'm an American. I was born here. I'm going to do what I'm going to do to try and fend off, the forces of evil as best I can, even though I realize the reality on the ground is it's not going to be for much longer. And democracy is the system in many respects, how the enemies have gotten in behind the gates here, right? The barbarians have gotten through, and democracy is the key. It's interesting. One of our colleagues over at the Knights of Christendom gotten a little back and forth with Dinesh D'Souza today on Twitter, a friend of ours, Anthony. And it's funny because Anthony challenged him in regards to democracy and the problems. And one of the things he brought up, Julian, is that, you built a system on pluralistic notions, and then you give the enemies of your own nation the right and the power over your lives. And that's effectively what we've done. We've given the enemies of America and Western civilization and Christianity the power to govern over our lives. And again, the barbarians are through the gate. They've taken all the institutions, whether it's the media, the educational system, the corporation, sports, government, go down the list, our enemies. We've given these enemies the power to rule over us through the democratic process. But for some reason, people never make this connection. And guys like Dinesh D'Souza, who's a classical liberal right, who would tell you, listen, he's done a bunch of movies on America, pro-America. I have no problem being pro-America, but my issue is that at some point, conservatives need to leave this ideological prism, right? This ideological fantasy, and actually deal with reality on the ground, and they never want to do that, right? As things fall apart, all they'll do is thump, thump, thump. We got to get back to the founding principles. But one, we're never going there, Julian. We're never going back there. And number two, again, even if we were to magically go back that far, what makes you think we wouldn't be back here in just a few years? It's, again, they don't want to deal with reality, Julian.
Yeah, I mean, they don't want to deal with reality. I think what's interesting is I'm trying to Google it right now, but I'll do it from memory as best as I can. You talk about how our enemies have powers over our lives. In one of the same-sex marriage rulings in the past, before same-sex marriage became legal across all 50 states, one of the judges in a case on a state level, who himself was an open homosexual, heard the case and ruled. Now, to me, from a legal standpoint, or just even a common standpoint, that seems fishy, that a person who is of that lifestyle would be ruling in favor of something about his lifestyle, and then lo and behold, the ruling favors his lifestyle. This is the problem, I don't think, as you said, that with Dinesh D'Souza and just any of these people, you have enemies in positions of power in your life, enacting, ruling, and legislating in favor of their lifestyles, be it anybody that you disagree with, and then you cry foul and say, well, I don't agree with your lifestyle and this isn't right. Well, the system that you have in place has allowed these people to gain this position, and then what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's the irony of it all. And, I think we have this fanciful dream from the classical right that we're all going to march hand in hand, and after sort of duking it out, or at least having a civil conversation about the about the ideas of America, the great civil discourse. We Americans will come to the right conclusion and will make the right decision, like Americans have always made the right decisions, right? It's kind of one of the things Ronald Reagan used to say. I like Ronald Reagan. It's one of my favorite presidents, as imperfect as he was, right? But fighting in the battle arena of ideas, that's what guys like Limbaugh and Hannity have pushed for years, and this is what conservatives have done. And what has that led to? Fighting the battle arena of ideas, nothing but a bunch of losses, right? At the electoral box. And even when they win, like I said earlier, Judith, they actually never get anything done. I think what conservatives have never understood, what classical liberals have never understood, is the fact that in the founding principles of the country, the founders never wanted to deal with the fallen nature of man. And once you go down the path of, duking it out in the battle arena of ideas, if man's passions have been disordered, and we've seen the country go off a cliff morally over the past 50 or 60 years, there's no reason to believe, and I think you just highlighted this with your example, that people are not going to vote in their sins. They're not going to care about your battle arena of ideas. They're going to want their sins justified, Julian, and this is what we're seeing in America today.
Exactly. I mean, I don't understand. I don't know what Dinesh D'Souza or people like Ben Shapiro or any of these people think is going to happen. I've been trying to make people in my life understand that you can watch Fox News, you can watch Tucker Carlson, you can watch Bill O'Reilly, you can watch Sean Hannity, you can listen to Ben Shapiro, and you can say that they're conservative, even though they're not. They're neoliberals. They're liberals.
Yeah.
They're a different type of liberal. But you can say that they're conservative, and you can, get all riled up from them. But what have they actually conserved in this country? You've said it best. What did, may he rest in peace, but Rush Limbaugh, his whole entire life, the country fundamentally changed from the time he was born to the time he died. And he spent half of his life talking about wanting to conserve the country. Well, again, what are conservatives conserving
Nothing.
in the country?
Nobody
can give me a clear answer of what. Okay, so conservatives want to conserve something from 5 years ago. Well, what's so conservative about 5 years ago? Well, conservatives want to conserve something from 50 years ago. How's that even possible? We live in a fundamentally different society than 50 years ago. What are you conserving?
Yeah.
10 years ago, conservatives, or not even 10, back in 2008, conservatives were against gay marriage. Now you hear nothing against conservatives wanting to overturn that. The only thing that conservatives talk about is abortion. And that's only so you can get money. Like, honestly.
Yeah.
So if conservatives stop talking about abortion, they'll lose the majority of their funding.
Yeah, I think there's definitely problems on the political right that they're not acknowledging. I think it's desperation time, because I think they're reading the writing on the wall, but they can't accept reality on the ground like they never have, because they really have no other answers, no other solutions. I think they've convinced themselves that the current system of post-enlightenment society was sort of a godsend of sorts, and they put all their marbles in one basket, and now they got a situation where they've lost control of the country, they've lost control of the culture, and essentially all of civilization, and everybody doesn't know what to do now at this point in history. And I think this is only going to be talk that continues to rouse up. I don't know, Julian. But listen, let's move on to the next story, because this is really, in large part, one of the problems. It leads to the problem of democracy, and again, it's another problem that conservatives are really not answering. There's a report that came out, and this is from Evie magazine. It's one of these girly magazines, I believe.
What magazine is it again?
What's that?
What magazine? What is the name again?
Evie. It's called Evie, I believe.
Evie, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I haven't either, but it's making its rounds around social media, especially in conservative sites. And now they're talking about how liberal women, white liberal women, you're finding that they're mentally sick, and there's a great majority of it. Study was done by Pew Research, and the study, which examined, quote, white liberals, moderates, and conservatives, both male and female, found conservatives were far less likely to be diagnosed with mental health issues than those who identified as either liberal or even very liberal. What's more, white women suffered the worst of all. White women ages 18 to 29 who identified as liberal were given a mental health diagnosis from medical professionals at a rate of 56.3% as compared to 28.4% in moderates and 27.3% in conservatives. End quote. Julian, the bottom line, 56% of white liberal women are being diagnosed as mentally sick, and yet, Julian, they have the same right to vote, the same power to determine the outcome of the nation and how your family and my family gets to live our lives. They have judgment over all of our lives, and these women are mentally sick, and they're going to the polls. And this is what we're talking about, democracy on the brink of collapse, Julian. I mean, I'm not shocked. Your thoughts, my friend?
I'm sorry. I'm not sure if you could hear me laughing like while you were saying all this. I'm sorry. It's just I don't need a study to tell me that white liberal women have mental issues.
I know.
But I've been saying this for years. There's nothing I can't stand more as a screeching, patronizing white liberal woman. Especially a white liberal woman that wants to tell me about that wants to be my white knight in shining armor because I'm black and she's white and she's coming to save me.
Yeah.
I can't stand that. I can save myself. Thank you very much. White liberal women. It's not. I don't find it shocking. Every single study, I think since the rise of feminism for the last 60-something years, has shown that women, their quality of life, their happiness, just everything about women in the last 60 years has just been bad for them in terms of mental health, fulfillment, spirituality, sex, child rearing, finding a husband, finding a partner, not necessarily a husband, just everything.
Right.
Women, just every single study just is doom and gloom for women and just keeps getting worse. As Milo Yiannopoulos says, feminism is cancer. And so I'm not surprised by this study. And I've also, liberalism is a disease. Liberalism is a mental disease. It doesn't just affect women, white liberal women. It affects everybody. But specifically, white liberal women seem to be afflicted most by this disease. And I think it's a combination because it's the subset disease. Liberalism is the main disease. The subset of it is feminism. And so your diagnosis is liberalism with an acute feminism.
Yeah. And I think the part of this study that our rationalistic society won't really address either, I believe a lot of these women are demonically possessed anyways. The behavior is consistent from what we've known to what exorcists have always kind of revealed about demonic possession. I'm reminded of this game I used to play. I still play it actually. It's called Rome Total War, right? Where you get to fight battles as the Roman Empire. You're fighting different tribes during the period of the dominance of the Roman Empire. You're fighting the Gauls. You're fighting the Britons. And one of the wars you fight in that game is you fight against Germania and sort of the German sort of pagan barbarian tribes. And one of the troops that they send against you to fight is a battalion of screeching women, right?
Oh,
And of course, these women are slaughtered in this game all the time because they're one of the weakest. They're one of the weakest battalions that they are. But I can't help but think of that, considering that the screeching liberal women that you see out in the protests, whether they're protesting feminist issues, abortion, things like that, it's an ugly sight. It's an ugly sight, and you see a lot of, in my opinion, demonic behavior by a certain sense of appearances, right? The extreme elements of tattoos and things like that, right? The types of clothing they wear, things that oftentimes are related back to even things like satanic temples. You could see it all over people. And I'm not condemning everybody that has a tattoo. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, like anything else, these things, these symbols can be taken to an extreme. I remember one image specifically, I believe it happened in Rome, I believe, I could be wrong, of topless feminists, showing up to, I believe, a Vatican council of some sort, some church function, and them dousing a priest sitting at the table with water and throwing glasses and cups at him, and while they're topless running around screeching like a bunch of little demons there. I mean, these are things you see all over the place. I even saw one image once out of Argentina where the men and the boys had surrounded a Catholic church in that country because the screeching feminist women, these demonic inspired, were going to go there to destroy the church, and the men had to stand up to defend the church in their town. And as they stood there, the women threw eggs at him, food, spray paint, and the men stood their ground to defend the church of their town. I mean, this is the kind of madness we're seeing all over the globe. It's just not highlighted oftentimes by the mainstream media. Listen, democracy in general is problematic, like we've talked about. But when you mix into it liberalism and this narcissistic notion where we separated the natural from the supernatural, and now all of a sudden we reduce everything down to the natural, right? Our roles have been reversed in regards to men and women. We've seen that over the past 50 years. In this process, women have taken up a lot more responsibilities in the sense that they got a heavy burden to carry, apart from just being a mother and a wife and things that actually fulfilled them at one time. And oftentimes women are angry because on top of being mothers, on top of trying to fulfill their families and raise their families and please their husbands, now they're being asked to work full time. In that same process, men have been really pushed out of the culture, right? I said in a recent podcast, this number of college graduates that we have now, where 60% of all college graduates now are young ladies and women, and men graduating from college is down 40%. What does that mean in large part for culture? It means women are now taking men's jobs and the ability for men to become providers of families. And when men are not being providers of families, they got no other reason to do anything but sit around, watch porn, and play video games. And you could blame the men that have fallen into that trap, but women have altered the nature. They've altered the status between men and women and how these roles are played. If you have, again, a usury system and an economic system, Julian, that's what is service sector, and now men and women are competing for the same jobs because all the tough jobs have been shipped overseas, it's a problem. We're seeing the breakdown the culture. We're seeing men and women not on equal par anymore. They're not the complementary creatures that God made us to be, and that the old world, the monarchs and the Catholic Church understood. Men and women are fundamentally different, but they're complementary creatures. Now, in liberal society, we say women are better than men, and that's playing out every day in Western civilization.
I think most people don't recognize that there is a correlation between the rise of women graduating high school, graduating college, graduating professional schools, women in the workforce, more so in a variety of sectors, in higher paying positions, that it does really, they talk about, MGTOW. MGTOW is an acronym for men going their own way, are involuntarily celibate, men just opting out of society all in general, not wanting to get married, not wanting to have a girlfriend, not wanting to get a job, because, society has constantly, especially since I graduated high school, but especially the last years of Obama and all throughout Trump's presidency, this rise in toxic masculinity. Men are toxic. Everything that has to deal with men is toxic. And that does a lot of harm on men's psychological health. This is not talked about a lot, but there is an increase in suicide, particularly among men, young and old. There's so many things that are going on with men in society that people don't make the connection between all the things that you just mentioned and how it is affecting men. When men don't have a sense of purpose, two things can happen, and it's bad for society. They opt out of society or they get violent. And when you have these two things in society, you do not have a functioning society, because a functioning society requires men to have a purpose and want to fulfill that purpose.
Yeah.
If they are not fulfilling a purpose, they get violent and they destroy, and they will destroy themselves, and they will take as many people as they can with them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think
you don't want to protect society, and so you don't have a functioning society.
Yeah, and I think that problem is really, sort of enhanced because we're an apostatized culture too, where true faith and true religion has died. I think men that are what we would consider devout Christian or Catholic homes, even, I think we understand the sacrificial nature of our being, but also it's God that keeps us in line, that we have duties. But in a secularized pagan culture where men are not being raised with any formal education and without any formal catechesis in the faith, it's hard to convince these young men why they should do the right thing. And that's the biggest problem now. And you can't blame men for opting out. I know we have, the school shooting that happened in Michigan again, and you wonder what were the problems there. But this is a phenomenon that's increasing all over really our civilization. And it's one of the many problems that continue to increase sort of, in the past 50, 60 years as moral standards have broken down.
Right,
I think.
Say something real quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
About the school shooting. Now, I do think that the Michigan school shooter's dad was in this person's life. I don't know. I haven't really been following.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I haven't followed it. Yeah.
But what I do know and what I can say, the commonality between the vast majority, overwhelming majority of school shooters come from single mother homes.
Yeah.
Now, this is not a slap in the face of single mothers. But what it does indicate is that with no father figure in the house, that it does lead to some bad things happening for society.
Yeah, and I think the key here is, we focus on the father not being home, and that's critical. But it's also the father is not there precisely because the faith has been lost. Because a father of great faith does not abandon his family ever, right? Because that's what men do once they're properly formed in the faith. And as America has tinkered with religion, right? Religious liberty, Julian. You do you, I do me. As long as we don't cross each other's property lines, we don't shoot each other. America's greatest failure, I think the poison pill, was at the founding, when the founding fathers never acknowledged true faith and true religion. And here we are. If you have, and I said this before, I said again, you have a bunch of founding fathers who, in their own religious ways, in their own religious lack of orthodoxy, cannot codify a unified belief. There goes, in essence, a culture that was never going to be unified, and here we are, really. The religious beliefs of the founding fathers, or at least the contradictory religious beliefs of the founding fathers, has come full circle. And now we have a nation, Julian, that believes in nothing other than materialism and power at this point in time. Money, sex, and power. There's no God, there's no means to control this at this point in history. And we're seeing now, really, women become mentally deranged, men becoming depressed. The sexes are at war with one another, when in fact, Julian, they should be complementary creatures like they were in the old world. Your final thoughts, my friend.
Yeah, you're right. I definitely agree. We hear so much talk. We don't hear, they don't say this language, I guess, anymore. But I mean, I guess whenever I was in high school, I heard it more then than I do now, because society has, in my view, fundamentally changed from 2008 till now. But there was talk about like the battle between the sexes, the battle between the genders, and all of that. And the sexes were at war with each other, and it's exacerbated itself from then and now, and it shouldn't be that way. There's the only reason why the sexes are at war with each other is because both sexes don't want to live in reality.
Yeah.
Women think they can do whatever men can do, and men think that women can do whatever men can do, which is not true. And it just, nobody wants to live in reality when it comes to the sexes of each other. And how that also plays out in politics, particularly with democracy, it just is the perfect maelstrom for just insanity.
Yes. You're absolutely right, my friend. And listen, ladies and gentlemen, it pains me as an American being born and raised in this country. I love this country. I have everything at stake here, including children that I'm raising. And I look at the future of my children, and I just got to shake my head. And in that sense, I'm pulling for America to pull through. I'm praying for that miracle that somehow something of a divine intervention happens to save this country. It brings me no pleasure to talk negatively about America. If democracy actually worked, I'd be a believer in it. I just think there's too much evidence to show that it's problematic. Now, that being said, am I willing to work with the democratic system? Because that's what we are. Absolutely, I am. And this is why I still vote. But what I want my friends on the classical liberal side to understand is you guys need to step away from the utopian dreams, the utopian sort of visions and historical narratives that you've been fed, because reality on the ground, it's much different. The country is coming apart at the seams, as much as it breaks my heart to say that. And I don't know what my future holds for my kids. Listen, I'll be gone in a matter of time here. I'm 50 years old. I'm a sick man. It's irrelevant for me. It's about future generations. That's why I fight the good fight. Julien, you're a young man. You got your whole life ahead of you. I fight for you as well, too. I love America. I don't want this country to sink. I want to give it hope. I'm hoping we come up with some kind of idea. I'm hoping people wake up. But really, the more I look around, this nation, and man, there's just a subset of citizens here that have lost their marbles, man. And I think it all has to do with the great apostasy. I think there's problems at the origins of the nation. I'll keep saying that. I think there's problems with the lack of true faith and true religion in America. And at the end of the day, we've all have caved into our fallen nature. Now we're all pursuing our passions. We're all pursuing our sins. And unless we deal with that, there's no saving America. We're not going to vote ourselves out of this problem. And the fact that now conservatives and classical liberals are talking about an amicable divorce, or they're talking about breaking up the country, and now even talking about how democracy is failing, I really shouldn't have to continue to remind you guys about the problems of America. You guys are just trying. You guys are starting to figure it out. It's just a matter of the reality, how we're going to deal with these problems. Julien, my friend, thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you, my friend. And I want to thank again Julien DeMarco. May he reign blog. May you check out his channel. I'll put the link in the description box. And he's got some great content as well, too. This is Frank signing off for Frankly Speaking. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.